50 years of cultural resilience, academic excellence, and community engagement. Bonjour, Ani Tanse. Good morning. I am Roy Albright of the Manitoban, bringing to you an update of the 50th anniversary celebration ongoing. Right behind me is the Marshall McLuhan Hall. Today's event brings together faculty, alumni, and supporters of the Indigenous department to celebrate this Jubilee anniversary. And also today's event brings together some of the trailblazers of the First Nation, Métis, and Eskimo, such as Ovid Mekredi and his cohort. And we would also get to interact with some of the attendees to share their highlights of the event. As you rightly mentioned that you happen to be one of the founders, that led to today's celebration, yes. Right? Without the foundation, we wouldn't be here celebrating it. Could you tell us what really inspired the whole idea of founding this organization or association?
Yeah, we were young students, young Aboriginal students, young Indigenous students here, and we wanted to start an organization. And one of the things that happened in this university or in this world was the movement for civil rights and civil liberties, like the black organizations in the United States. And we felt the same way because we were learning. And when we encountered racism, from this university, we decided to organize and fight that racism. And one of the ways of fighting racism, of course, is through education. Nelson Mandela said that from South Africa. Get an education. And we did that. We wanted to push for an Indigenous studies program. That way, we would educate the world and educate other students, so they would have a better understanding of our people.
Great. So speaking of education, do you think that your legacy, in a way, has seen some instrumental effect or impact on the Indigenous Studies department and also the consumers of the Indigenous Studies program?
Oh, no doubt that we were trailblazers. We would work with the president and the different deans and trying to get the Indigenous Studies program underway. And we were here to learn, but we wanted to learn about ourselves. There was nothing about ourselves. What we learned is what the white people were telling us, that we were savages. We were more than savages. We were a people.
Today happens to be the 50th anniversary celebration of the department. And what lessons are you taking from this celebration, considering the struggles that some founders had to go through to get this done? For you or the future generation of today to celebrate, what are you drawing from it?
I hope to see something new. As I was coming to U of M, I was very excited to take my own language, and I know that was a recent development through the Indigenous Studies department, through a lot of hard work, through people who came before me, obviously, and I'm very excited to see what happens next with Indigenous Studies.
And also, do you see yourself as one of the frontliners in the future to continue to push for the cultural resilience of the Indigenous community?
Oh, I sure hope so. I love this community, and I really hope I can continue to be part of this community going forward and supporting it as well.
And what are some of the expectations that you have for today's event?
I hope to hear from Ovid. I'm kind of a fan. Ovid Mekredi's, he founded UMISA, and I was on UMISA last year, and I'm very excited to see Ovid.
And my final question, what would you want to share with your Indigenous students alike?
Join the community, join the clubs. There's lots of opportunities. Myself, I was on lots of clubs last year, and it helped build a family on campus, so it didn't feel like it was hard here. It felt more easygoing, and it was enjoyable.
What message would you have to some of your continuing students and alumni who have passed through the corridors of the Indigenous department?
Yeah, I would encourage you to get involved in your communities, in your nations, and always give back, because our communities and nations give us so much, and if we don't give back and if we do not serve our communities, then we're leaving it up to often non-Indigenous people who don't have the lived realities and don't have the experience to really deal with the intimacies of our communities. And what happens is that you then have people making decisions about applying really problematic frameworks like two-eyed seeing in contexts where they shouldn't be applied.
What program are you studying?
I'm in my first year of my PhD in Indigenous Studies.
So what inspired you to take your program in the Indigenous Studies department?
Well, as a Métis woman with a strong interest in history and politics, I found that the Department of Indigenous Studies was the perfect fit for my research because of its interdisciplinary nature and the way that it privileges Indigenous knowledges.
Yeah, so speaking of privileging Indigenous knowledge, how do you see the programs offered by the Indigenous department would help shape the concept or the idea of truth and reconciliation?
Right, so the Department of Indigenous Studies does important work, like I said, to bring forth Indigenous knowledges as serious sources to consider when we're making decisions about politics, government, whatnot. So in addition to making known these perspectives, it also makes known how settler colonialism is working in our society and makes known some of these tactics of possession and ownership and how these are working, to continue the system of settler colonialism that is perpetrated today. So the department does really important work to try to encourage people to reconsider what their relationship is to this land and to the Indigenous people here.
So this afternoon we are celebrating the 50 years of the department, and what would you say joining the department has been one of the major highlights or achievements for you?
Well, joining the Department of Indigenous Studies has allowed me to bring my family's Métis knowledge into the academy and bring our family stories there to help challenge existing histories that have dehumanized Métis people.
You happen to be one of the faculty members, and I would want to also check in with you. So for the years that you've been with the department, what would you say has been some of the achievements or milestones that you've seen in terms of Indigenous education?
So I'm coming up to my 13th year being a faculty member, and I'm not the senior member, but I'm one of the most senior members in the department. We're a very young department. We've had a massive amount of hires recently. We're now almost at 16. We'll have 16 as of next year. What I'll just say is the department has gone through many shifts and changes, but you have seen people who have changed lives, published the most groundbreaking books. You've seen people who have done incredible contributions to Indigenous communities at the grassroots level. Many of our students go on to become chiefs or counselors or doctors or lawyers or dentists, and we even have the Grand Chief of Manitoba currently, who's one of our former students as well. The fact is that we have a body of work that shows evidence that Indigenous studies is not only a critical part of this university, but it's really a critical part of the province. It has formed the basis for so much of the relationships we now know between Indigenous peoples and Canadians that form the basis of all elements, courtrooms, boardrooms, classrooms, all across this province.
So how do you see Indigenous studies, the continuous education in terms of the indigeneity influencing the path to truth and reconciliation?
I think it's significant that we teach the Indigenous credit requirement. So we teach every student in the Faculty of Arts. They have to come through an Indigenous Studies course usually, or a course involving Indigenous content with another affiliate department, but often is working with us through a committee. I think it's relevant that if you look at our outcomes, the alumni, they are people who have written laws. These are people who have marched in the streets. And these are also people who have made decisions to raise families here, to commit to build organizations here, and that are continuing to commit to build. It's significant that the people that you saw today, for example, are the children of the original students. They are grandchildren of those original people who are fighting to make sure that we would be included in places like university. And then then, there are our children here as well who are watching us as students in universities who will then go on to become faculty members or their own professionals in their own regard. The legacy of Indigenous studies is really about building the country, but also about building the sovereignty, the independence of our First Nations, Inuit, Métis communities.
As the celebration comes to a close, one thing is clear. The legacy of the Indigenous Studies Department here at the University of Manitoba continues to shape minds, influence change, and strengthen connections across generations. Here is to the next 50 years of learning, leadership, and community.